What I want to show you today is how to get your words from your mouth out into the world as a podcast. I'm not going to talk about finding your creative voice or your niche or your audience. Those are really important topics, but there are plenty of people teaching that sort of thing. As for me, I just want you to see what you need to do step by step to get a podcast out where it can be found. The nuts and bolts and how to, which buttons to push. I'm not going to promise to 100x your audience or help you find your life's purpose. We're just going to set up a podcast and get it up and running. It's so simple, but you do need to understand basically how it works. And to that end, here it is, in super simple terms. And speaking of simple, we're going to use Spotify for Creators because it's free and it's extremely easy. Now, of course, the very first thing you need to do is to record your first episode and have that audio file on your computer and ready to go. If you don't know how to do that, then you can check out my other services. I can help you with that too, but this video is just about how to put a podcast out in the world. Now, assuming that you do already have your podcast episode recorded and ready to go, head over to creators.spotify.com. That's creators.spotify.com. creators.spotify.com. Now, if you already have a Spotify account, log in. Otherwise, set up an account. And once you have an account set up, you'll get this screen. Click on Create a New Show. Note the link that says, Have an Anchor account? Well, this is because Spotify for Creators used to be Anchor. Spotify acquired Anchor and changed the name. If you already have an existing account with Anchor, you'll want to click here, but most of us will just proceed with Create a New Show. Now you'll get this. Hit the Customize button on the upper right corner. That will bring you here, which will allow you to decide how you want to see your Spotify for Creators homepage. This just adjusts how your Spotify for Creators homepage will look to you. This doesn't really impact your podcast or how it looks to other people whatsoever. This is just for your workspace. In fact, I'm just going to go with the default settings. They're fine with me. You might or might not want to do the same, but remember, this doesn't impact your ability to do stuff. So I'm just going to hit Save Changes. And now you'll get this. As you can see, there are some articles and tutorials here. You can check them out if you want, and I wouldn't say not to, but really, you're going to get all the truly necessary information that you absolutely need in this video. So those articles, they might help you understand podcasting at a different level, far more than what I'm going to talk about, but you can also decide to read these later. They'll come up again and again. And again and again and again. But if you just want to push forward right now, you can. This video that you're watching right now will give you the nuts and bolts that you need to move forward right away. So, how do I say this? I definitely would not talk you out of reading this stuff, but I'm trying to make this video in a way that you don't have to. So, read it if you want, or move on forward, or read them later. Whatever you want to do. But if you decide that you don't want to read those articles, just give it a moment. The page should reload. And if it doesn't, you can refresh the page and you'll get this. And this page is where we will actually set up the show. So click on, you guessed it, Set Up Your Show. Now this page will come up and you can enter your show name and description. Once that's done, you can scroll down and fill in some more info. As you can see, it's autofilled my name, and obviously you'll want to use your own name, at least I hope so, and you can also pick yourself a category and a language and then hit Next. Now drop in the art you'd like to use for the show by clicking on Drag and Drop or Select File. I'm using this picture of a handsome man. After you do that, it'll take you back here. Mine says the Common Era because that's what I named my show. Notice that those articles we skipped are still available. You can read them anytime you want. As you can see, it's telling us that the setup is complete and that our next step is to verify our email address, unless you've already done so. Either way, if you've spent more than like 5 minutes online, you know the drill. Just click on verify your email address. And that'll give you this window where, as I'm sure you already know, just click Got It and look for the email in your inbox. I'm sure we've all done this a million times. Once that's done, we'll end up back here again where it's gone ahead and put a little check mark where it says email address verified. And now we can click Publish an Episode. Clicking that will give you this screen, and assuming that you do have a show ready to upload, you can do so here. If you haven't already recorded your episode, it also gives you the option to create one by using Riverside. Now, I'm not going to comment in this video as to my opinion on using Riverside. I teach audio, and I teach how to make your own material, so obviously that's how I'm doing things. If you really want me to do a full review of using Riverside, let me know in the comments and maybe I'll do that. Now, for now, I did make my own recording and I'm going to use it, so I'm just going to click Select a File, or of course, I could just drop my sound file onto the screen. I had an episode ready, so I uploaded it, which brought me here, where I can enter some more information about the show. As you typed the name of the episode, that new name automatically updated the preview on the right of the screen. I also typed a description of the episode. Scrolling down from here, it's all very self-explanatory. We can enter, update, or modify a few things like the artwork, add shortcuts to useful URLs, as well as some other important details. For instance, tag if you use explicit content or copyrighted material. The default no setting is the right one for me. We can add a poll, and if we want, denote whether this is a full show or a trailer or a bonus. We can also indicate the season and the episode, which I'm designating as Season 1, Episode 1. And a couple of just last few items here where I'm just going to click Next. Now we can review and enter just a few more details. This is mostly just to double check your work and fix things if you need to. Again, very self-explanatory. I'm choosing to publish now, so I'll click the Publish box on the bottom right. Note that even now we still have the option to change a few things or even use a whole new audio file, but I don't need to do that today, so I'm just hitting Publish. Now it gives me this as confirmation, which is nice. After Xing out of that window, it takes me here, my homepage, with a big box that shows me my new episode. When I X out of that box, I'm still looking at my homepage, which shows this new episode has been published. Oh, and yes, those articles we skipped are still here if you want to read them. At this point, this is basically your sandbox where you can start using Spotify's tools to promote and analyze your show, make additional changes, and basically just have fun creating. So, congratulations! You have now published a podcast. Before we wrap, though, I want to explain a little bit of what's happening behind the scenes. I'm hoping that this graphic will help you see how this works, so I'll just leave it up while I explain things. I don't love the way the RSS feed box is so large, but just stay with me as I go and everything will make sense. The first thing for you to understand is that you are actually working with two entities when you make a podcast. The first entity is a hosting service, and there are a lot of them. We used Spotify today, but there are others. Substack is popular because it's also free and will link to your other work, such as your blog if you have one. But there are even more like Buzzsprout and Libsyn and many others. The hosting service is where you upload your episodes. The hosting service then connects to the other entity in the chain here, which is the distributor. The hosting service uses something called an RSS feed to talk to the distributors. And I'll explain more on that in a moment, but for now, just know that the distributors are pretty much the exact same thing as your player apps or your podcast app or your platforms. You can think of them all as being the same thing, and that's where all your listeners go, and you've probably seen some of these yourself. Places like Apple Podcasts or CastBox or Overcast or Pocket Cast and Oh, so many others. And yes, Spotify is a distributor, but Spotify is unique because it's both. It's a hosting service and a distributor, so that's why it shows up in a lot of places, and that's why it's so simple. For now, don't dwell on that. There are so many distributors out there, and the podcasts don't actually live at the distributor's house. The distributors just have links to the hosting service, and the hosting service tells them, hey, I've got this new podcast, and here's how you can link to it. Then the distributors put a link to that podcast on their site, and that's where the listeners click. So the listener goes to the distributor, that is to say the player app or the podcast app, and they click on a podcast. What they clicked on was just a link to the podcast, which still lives at the hosting service's house. This might seem obtuse, but there are a lot of reasons why it works this way. And the key to all of this is the RSS feed. The RSS feed is basically just a web address on the internet that comes from the hosting service. It says, hey, I have this podcast. If you have a player app on your phone, that is a distributor. And that player app has RSS feeds for a ton of podcasts. That player app periodically goes out on the internet and checks those RSS feeds for new episodes, the same way your email app periodically goes out on the internet and checks for new mail. Your player app does pretty much the same thing with RSS feeds. I should probably reiterate that I use player app and distributor interchangeably. You can also think of them as your podcast app, and sometimes they're called platforms. For this video, you can think of them as all the same thing. I know I've said that like 30 times, but they are. They're basically the same thing. Very pedantic people are going to complain to me that they're not quite the same, but for your purposes, distributor, platform, podcast app, player app, same thing. They all give you links that you can click and go listen to a podcast, which lives at the hosting service. So just to review, the creator uploads a podcast to the hosting service. The hosting service updates its RSS feed to say, hey, I have a new episode. The distributors check the RSS feed for new episodes. The listener goes to the player app to see if there are any new episodes. If there are, the listener will see them and they can click on the link. But remember, the link actually takes them to the hosting service's house. Now, the big question you might be asking is, how does my hosting service choose which distributors to use? And that's a really important question, and it's actually the whole reason that I felt like I needed to explain this to you. Well, the hosting service usually has a few distributors that it always links to, and those lists vary from hosting service to hosting service. Now, almost everybody currently links to Spotify and Apple, but there are others out there too. If you want to make sure that your podcast is being sent to all those other distributors, you might have to tell your hosting service directly. If you don't, a lot of the smaller distributors will still grab it. They kind of scrape the big services to find new podcasts. But that can be a little inconsistent. If you really want to be specific, the best thing to do is to tell your hosting service which distributors it should talk to about your show. Unfortunately, this process is different depending on which hosting service you're on and which distributors you want to use. It also seems to change over time, so if I told you here, chances are good that by the time you see this, things might be different already. So my advice, if you want to do this, you don't have to, but if you want to be really thorough, my advice is to do a Google search on distributing your podcast to other platforms. Distributing your podcast to other platforms. And that will help you specify which distributors your show will go out to. Luckily, you only have to do this once for your show. Once a distributor knows your show exists, it'll constantly check its RSS feed for new episodes. You can also just publish your show to the default platforms, which is usually Spotify and Apple, and then count on the smaller apps to just get your show from scraping the big guys. And that'll probably take care of most of them. This is part of the reason that Spotify for creators is so easy. In the eyes of a creator, it all looks like the same thing. And you can treat it that way and you'll be okay. I just wanted you to understand how the process actually works and give you the option to put your show on all of the distributors' platforms if you want to. But for now, it's time to wrap up this video. Thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you next time. Ciao.